Good evening and welcome to the League of Women Voters St. Paul's April Learn with the League program. This evening's presentation is Rebuilding University Avenue. Most months on the last Tuesday of the month, the St. Paul League hosts an engaging discussion around topics of interest to our communities. My name is Beatrice Owen and I'm a St. Paul League board member and member of the program committee. I'm honored to be here this evening to host this event. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan membership organization dedicated to helping improve our government and engage all citizens in the decisions that impact our lives. The St. Paul League joins the efforts of over 800 leagues across the country as we bring nonpartisan advocacy, education, and empowerment to the local level. If you are currently not a member of a league chapter, we invite you to join and help in the efforts to strengthen our democracy. We want to thank St. Paul Neighborhood Network for sharing this program to their viewers. We appreciate your support. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are learning today on the ancestral homeland of the Dakota, Minnesota, and the current home of many Native nations, including Mini Dakota and Ojibwe. Tonight's program is being recorded and broadcast on Facebook Live. If you are watching on Facebook Live, we welcome you to put your comments in your questions in the comment section. We will also take questions from the audience watching on Zoom. You can send your questions throughout the program using the Zoom Q&A feature, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. Over Memorial Weekend last year, there was a horrific incident involving the police and an unarmed Black man. As you know, the repercussions of the incident have been felt across the globe. Protests in George Floyd's name occurred in over 80 countries on every continent, including Antarctica. Here in the Twin Cities, the protests extended over the summer. That first weekend, there was, in addition to the peaceful protests, civil unrest that included the burning of buildings, rioting, looting, and other damage. The total damage is estimated at well over $100 million. Now, with one trial completed, another in August, and sentencing, there may be possible ramifications. Our community is wanting to know next steps. Rebuilding efforts have begun here in St. Paul. The St. Paul League has, since 1992, had a position on supporting programs to rehabilitate and conserve urban areas. We support the efforts of so many organizations that are helping rebuild our community. We have two presenters this evening that will share information about the damage, efforts at legislation, possible funding mechanisms, and what the future holds. We also have a business owner who was directly impacted by the civil unrest. We will hear from her about what she did, heard, thought, and has subsequently done to rebuild. Please join me in welcoming our three presenters. Our first presenter is Chad Koulis. Chad has been executive director of the Midway Chamber of Commerce since 2015. He has worked with the city of St. Paul, the St. Paul Area Chamber, and has spent most of his 20-year career supporting communities in St. Paul. His board work includes as the current chair of the Ramsey County Workforce and Innovation Board and a past member of the Frogtown Neighborhood Association. He asks that you don't hold it against him, but he moved to Minneapolis due to love. After Chad, we are honored this evening to have Gloria Wong with us. Gloria is a business owner on University Avenue. She owns Century Plaza, a commercial property with over 20 tenants near Lexington Parkway. A refugee from Laos, she has been purchasing, remodeling, and renting real estate and commercial properties for almost 30 years. Our last presenter is Nicole Goodman, who recently joined the City of St. Paul as the Director of Planning and Economic Development. Prior to working here in St. Paul, she served as Vice President of Operations and Redevelopment Programs for the Alliance for Economic Development of Oklahoma City. a nonprofit contracted by the City of Oklahoma City to manage economic development entities, programs, and projects. Nicole's recent accomplishments at the Alliance included the management of a land use and strategic development plan for the Oklahoma City Innovation District, which included strategies for inclusive growth and wealth building in underserved communities. The first phase of the plan development is expected to generate more than $1 billion in annual economic impact and create 6,600 new jobs. Nicole holds a master's in public administration from the University of Oklahoma and is a Congress for New Urbanism accredited professional. Please join me in welcoming these three. First, here is Chad.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Beatrice. And it's good to be here with League of Women Voters in St. Paul. I remember participating and helping coordinate with you some city council candidate forums from years past. I'm thinking probably 2007, so it's been a little while, but happy to be with you tonight. I put on our title slide here, Rebuilding a Stronger Midway. The Midway Chamber's mission is basically building a stronger Midway. And over this past year, a lot of our work has also been about rebuilding and helping rebuild the stronger Midway. Next slide, please. Because I get this question more than anything else, what is the Midway? You can see that little oval around what is technically the neighborhood of Hamlin Midway. As you may know, there are 17 different distinctive neighborhoods or district councils in St. Paul. You can see it outlined there. However, most people refer to the Midway as a bigger area. For instance, technically speaking on this map, the new soccer stadium, Allianz Field, is not in the Midway, it's in Union Park. So most people view it particularly along University Avenue. We like to say that our area goes from the state capitol to campus, the U of M. Next slide. So a little bit more background on what defines the Midway area. I think it's interesting, the history, because I feel like everything old is new again in certain circumstances. Initially, we had the streetcars back in the early part of the 20th century. And we've got light rail trains again. And in between those two times, University Avenue was where you went to buy your car. And I know that this slide, you can't tell real well, but that picture there in front of Whitaker Buick was taken in 1956, I believe. And that's President Eisenhower on a parade route. So next slide. This is an old stat, but I still like to point it out, just to show people a little bit more of that background on what happened when the train started rolling along again. And after the first 5 years, that's 3 under construction, and the first 2 that the train was actually up in operation, there was $4.2 billion of development that happened along University Avenue and along the Green Line. Some of those projects you could say would have happened anyway. They were gonna do the Senate building and renovations to the Capitol, whether or not there was a train in front of it. Allianz Field, I don't think would have happened. And if you see a lot of those spots right there that we're talking about, those have changed into mixed use with a lot of housing. And you're seeing a lot of housing that's popping up along University Avenue on those corners where you have the Green Line. You're seeing a lot more of it being built right now. If you drive up and down University Avenue, you'll see a lot. Next slide. Another thing that defines the past and the present, stadiums. This was the old picture there, University in Lexington, where the St. Paul Saints played. The old St. Paul Saints, not the current version of it. This St. Paul Saints, well, the original St. Paul Saints ended up moving to Chicago and became the Chicago White Sox in the American League in 1901. Then we have Minnesota United and the soccer stadium that just opened up a few years ago. The first game for this year was last Saturday. So it's another interesting thing to notice that we had a stadium, now we have a new one. Next slide. Another thing that defines the Midway area is our diversity. You see here, this is Tua Zhang, the owner of Moncton Marketplace. And the bottom there, you see some of the murals that are around what's called the Little Africa neighborhood. That particular one is right around the Snelling University intersection. Next slide. So I want to just take another step back before we start talking about rebuilding to remind ourselves what our life was like pre-pandemic. And these were pictures that were taken at our biggest event of the year, our annual celebration, which was February 29th, 2020. Everybody's happy. There's a little bit of talk about something going on that's mostly at this point affecting overseas. We're not as concerned about it quite yet. But then next slide. Then comes March and our world is turned upside down. And all of a sudden, this is how we're doing events. We were fortunate enough, we actually just recently had Dr. Osterholm for a second time. But all of a sudden, we're viewing the world through our computer, just like we're doing tonight. Next slide. So businesses found ways to survive. They found ways to adapt. Just like at the chamber, we're doing our events and our meetings virtually. You're seeing restaurants. They were some of the most innovative places and how they adapted, where you're seeing now, if you're going to restaurants, you're seeing QR codes at tables. You just hold your camera phone over it and you've got the menu. You had the touchless deliveries that were happening. This picture here, I took on May 22nd. It was a Friday. When I got up that morning, my friend Solomon, the owner of Bole Ethiopian Cuisine, emailed me saying, hey, I want to do a soft opening because a week later he was going to be opening up Bole Express, which he described as a sort of like a Chipotle, but for Ethiopian food. And it was going to be in the same building as his current place, Bole. And so he said, I want you to come and check out the food at the soft opening. So I did, took a picture of it. And when I was done with that, I went across the street from where his location was and went to the Midway Target and picked up a couple things. Next slide. 1 week later, this is what Bole looked like. And I brought up the Target because the Target across the street is where the incidences started to happen in the Midway. As you may remember, it was late Thursday morning. And the Midway Chamber that day, we had started our Thursday with an event where we were talking about community. And little did we know, a few hours later, some people would run through Target, causing the police to go over there. And next thing you know, we've got buildings like Bole that have been burned down to the ground. Next slide. So one of the first things we had to do was assess the damage. And in fact, there you've got a picture of Solomon with Governor Walz. That's at Elsa's House of Sleep. We drew a lot of attention in our community. You see Betty McCollum is in the other picture there. And then at the bottom, you can't see it real well, but that's Senator Tina Smith. So we had both US senators, our governor, our member of Congress. We had state Senate, state House, all come and take walking tours and meet with business owners. And I know that Nicole will talk a little bit more about some of that legislation, but the purpose of this was because we wanted our legislators to understand better what was going on and understand that there is a need for support. I still think it's hard to really get a good exact number on the damage, but we've heard people say that it's probably around 100 million in St. Paul, 200 million in Minneapolis. Next slide. And Gloria will be able to talk about this building in a little bit, that this is Gloria's building right here. And I wanted to have a picture of it just so you could see a little bit about what it looks like and with the plywood up. I'm going to talk about that again in a second, but I want us to go to the next slide. So I mentioned that May 29th was when that one picture was taken. That was a Friday morning. The following Monday, June 1st, I talked with B. Kyle from St. Paul Chamber and Joe Spencer from the St. Paul Downtown Alliance. And we decided to start a fund where we would be able to support these businesses that were faced with all the damage from a few nights before. We're not the only fund that happened. I want to give credit to the Midway United Fund that was initially started by the Union Park District Council and the Hamlin Midway Coalition, Asian Economic Development Association, and African Economic Development Solutions also had funds that were going toward supporting these businesses. Next slide. I want to show that right now our fund here has so far been able to give over $950,000 to over 80 grantees. Most of the awards are between 5,000 and 50,000. I want to talk also about the generosity that people had. It goes anywhere from $20 to over 5 figures. I think we even had somebody over 6 figures, some of the businesses. But we would get letters in the mail with a check saying, I used to live in the Midway neighborhood in the 80s. Here's $20. And it would be from somebody in Colorado. So it just shows that people still care about their old neighborhood, and people that are in the neighborhood now certainly care for it. The outpouring of support was great. And we still have some money in the fund, which we have in part because some of the businesses have still been trying to figure out what to do next. And they didn't necessarily know what their needs were and what the costs were going to be. So we still have some money for them. We also did have a concern about what would happen this time around with the Chauvin trial and with other trials. We definitely all had a very collective sigh of relief last week when we saw a guilty verdict, not only because I personally believe he was guilty, but also because we feel that our neighborhood had a much quieter week than it otherwise could have. I mentioned Gloria's place. Gloria was one that we were able to help out. We worked with Morrison Construction. There was a lot of other contractors that were helpful, and we were able to help replace the windows for Gloria. Next slide. I want to also mention a couple organizations that have been helpful throughout the past year. There are a couple that I meet with pretty regularly. They have meetings depending on the time of year. So far, it's either been every other week or every week. One, Rebuilding Together Twin Cities, and another one, Construction Connection to Community. And they have some similarities. Both of them are working with contractors. They're working with people that are going to be volunteering or have been volunteering. They've been able to secure items like plywood, some construction materials, like I mentioned, the volunteers. And last week, there was a lot of concern that we were going to have to board up a lot of the buildings and perhaps have some of those contractors and their volunteers working around the clock. There was a little bit of plywood that went up, but instead right now we're looking at the onboarding process. And we've reached out saying, if anybody wants help onboarding, we've got some people that are willing to volunteer. So it was a nice transition to be able to make. Next slide. There's my contact information if you need to go get a hold of me. I know we have questions at the end, so I'll hold off anything else at this point. And Gloria, sounds like you're next.
Can everybody hear me? Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Legion of Women Voters, St. Paul, for inviting me to speak today. I am very honored to be telling my story. Again, my name is Gloria Wong, and I have been an entrepreneur for almost 30 years with experience in the legal, healthcare, and residential, commercial, real estate industry. I'm also a wife and mother of 3. And all my years in business, I never faced the challenge that this year has brought me. In 2016, I became a co-owner of Century Plaza. Since the building was nearly 100 years old, we renamed it Century Plaza. I visit the building every day to see the tenants and make sure any issues were addressed. People were happy, respectful of the property. There was a strong sense of community within the building. We have planned to make many updates to the property, and we're waiting approvals from the city to begin renovations when the civil unrest happened last summer. We knew there was a possibility that the disturbance could impact our building based on the Midway location, but we generally felt that the building will have nothing to attract potential troublemakers, but we were wrong. I remember late in May when one of our tenants at Century Plaza called to tell us that some people had broken into the building and were looting and destroying the property. We were shocked and distressed. We called law enforcement. none came. We have multiple security cameras with damage, but the footage I saw broke my heart. And you can see pictures. The looters treated Century Plaza like they have a personal vendetta against me. They broke windows, doors, and sprayed graffitis, threw trashes everywhere, stole items, and we found evidence that someone successfully tried to start a fire. The following day, family, friends, and strangers gathered together at the building to board up the windows and doors. I feared for our safety, but we have to do something. We estimated the property damage to be $85,000 to $95,000. Our building insurance refused to pay for any damage, for any broken windows that have been boarded up, claiming we caused the problems by boarding up. The following days, for the looting, I searched for resources that could help with repairs and apply for several grants I could. I was denied at every turn. Our governor, Tim Watts, stopped by to assess the damage along with some reporters and nonprofit organizations. After a few opportunities opened up, including We Love Midway and We Love St. Paul Chamber, the Midway Chamber and We Love St. Paul funding that helped offset the cost of repairs. Much of repairs came out of my personal saving, but it was needed lift to my spirits to have others in the community willing to help share this burden with me. After you see the pictures of the graffitis and the window broken, after repairs were made to the exterior of the building, we faced more challenges. Now bullet holes, damaged window, and graffiti began to appear on our building. We repainted over the graffitis only to have more appear. The graffiti became so frustrating, we stopped trying to clean it up together. When we looked at the other buildings around us, there was no graffiti and no additional damage. We knew Century Plaza was being targeted. Could it be because we are Asian American owned business? Could it be because we hosted many Asian American owned business and we could have many Asian American customers? After we started trying to remove the graffiti, it had stayed in the building for a while. A group of people from the city suddenly show up within the last couple of weeks and began to clean up. It was much needed relief. But today I just saw graffiti on my building, the east side and the west side again. So Century Plaza is not fully recovered from the physical and economic damage. We are heading in the right direction. And here are a few things that we need help us moving forward. Systematic racist police assess the use of force, which lead to the death of George Floyd. Give troublemakers an excuse and opportunity to loot it and cause damage. The guilty verdict in the Derek Chauvin case was stuck to justice and healing. But we need this issue to be taken more seriously. We need laws that require insurance company to pay for damage caused by the civil unrest when we try to mitigate the damages by boarding windows and doors. We need more financial opportunities to help pay for the damages that was not covered by insurance company. We need leaders who are fighting against Asian American hate and advocating for and supporting Asian American owner business. As a St. Paul business owner, it has been a long and painful journey with a few bright spots, but we are taking one day at a time. My hope is that we will learn from these hard times and move forward together as a community. Once again, thank you to the St. Paul Legion of Women's Voters for this opportunity to share our story of rebuilding Century Plaza.
Can everyone hear me? Thank you, Gloria. Thank you for your story. I know so many of the business owners have had similar experiences, and I know that was hard to share. But thank you so much. I'm Nicole Goodman. I am the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the City of St. Paul. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that? Is my screen showing? Can someone give me a sign? Because I can't see it now that I'm sharing it.
You're good.
Okay, all right. Okay, again, I'm Nicole Goodman. I'm the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the City of St. Paul. I've been here about 9 months. I came from Oklahoma City, as Beatrice mentioned. I do not have so many pictures and things to share. I have information I'm going to share about some of what we're doing at the city, some of what we have done, some of what we're doing to try to assist, and then we'll talk some more about how people can get involved. A quick overview, and I won't read my whole presentation, but I am going to read this this slide just to make sure that we cover everything. This is kind of just an overview. As all of you know, University Avenue in St. Paul is a richly diverse, vibrant area where many immigrant families, some who escaped war in their home countries, came to Minnesota, came to the Twin Cities and built businesses and lives for themselves. Many were underinsured for a tragedy of this magnitude. Some of them lost everything. You know, I'll add in a bit of a story of another business, as kind of as Gloria mentioned too. You know, Rob Yang from Phenom gave his story, his testimony in another meeting I was on, and he was talking about the circumstances that led to you know, the loss that they had that wasn't even expected, because he has a retail shop, and they were continuing to get inventory as COVID was going along, but they weren't able to open, so they weren't selling any inventory. They were just taking in more and more inventory. So when the civil unrest happened and the whole store was looted, he had far more inventory and far more loss than he was insured for. So he thought he was insured, right? And then he was underinsured because of the combination of the tragedies of COVID and civil unrest happening on top of each other, and the murder of George Floyd. So this is just a really heartbreaking, terrible story for everyone involved. And then as rebuilding takes place, there's really a true and present danger of the loss of this unique character and culture of the area, particularly if small BIPOC and immigrant-owned businesses are displaced. If things are rebuilt and the businesses that were there aren't able to come back or to reopen, that would be a tragic loss of the culture of the area. So we know that many of the business owners didn't own their business and didn't have a tenant building that they were able to come back to. They didn't own their property. They owned the business, but they didn't own their storefront, many of them, and some didn't have a place to come back to. So as we've done our research, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, we've learned that for many of the business owners, property ownership will be a key to ensuring that the area retains its character and rich culture. Chad mentioned so many organizations that gathered money, and the column that says remaining balance, this was several months ago. So those numbers aren't current, but it's just a point about how much people came forward and did try to help support all of these sort of business organizations, and grants were given out. And again, as Chad mentioned too, with their fund, they do still have some funds, and some of these other funds do as well, with businesses trying to just figure out what to do next. Still right now, trying to still work out insurance claims or figure out what's left. And then in anticipation of, could there be further civil unrest, and what do you do now? Do you rebuild now? Do you wait? So all of that uncertainty has led to some funding still being available, not as much as you see here, but I just wanted to give you like the magnitude of how much private funding was gathered. Excuse me. in talking with community partners and my team, as we were trying to figure out what can we do, how can we help. These were just a couple of quotes from AEDS and from other community partners who were talking about these challenges, exactly like that Gloria mentioned and the others have mentioned, that some couldn't pay their insurance premiums because their business was closed, or they just have been struggling with their insurance companies, trying to get their claims paid. So we know all of that is true and happening. We also learned again from, and I will read these two quotes because they speak to, again, some of what we're focusing on currently. Too many of our businesses, it says, rent the spaces they rely on and face perennial fears of displacement. We must invest in building capacity and increasing resources to establish the BIPOC and immigrant-led cooperatives, commercial land trusts, and other types of community ownership to anchor and build equity for our businesses. Then another of the partners said there's a huge opportunity right now to focus on commercial owner-occupied spaces. Funds could be used in conjunction with some of these other funding mechanisms, STAR, Equity Bridge Facility, and SBA dollars. So we, in our budget for 2021, did set aside $1 million for business assistance for civil unrest. And we knew that there were limited resources from other government organizations, lots of private funding, but not much from government at the time to assist businesses impacted. And again, our community partners have identified that need. So we are focusing a lot of our effort on new ownership models and wealth building opportunities for BIPOC community members. That's a priority. And the benefit of that would be, again, like this systemic change, real intergenerational wealth building and community ownership. We have some specialties in some of what we're good at and building the framework with partners to acquire properties. And then hoping to keep businesses in St. Paul for future generations. Some of the businesses have already left, they've gone other places. And if they leave because they lost their tenant space, it's really difficult to get them back. There is proposed legislation. It's currently, I think, House File 2269. It's moving around through the legislative process, but a couple of things. It can pay for damage and destruction to property and private property and public property. That it definitely can do. And then also to create and retain jobs, support the enterprise development, wealth creation for persons adversely affected by longstanding structural racial discrimination and poverty, and prevent displacement of small businesses owned by people of color and indigenous people. That language is in the bill. It's part of what's intended. There are a couple of different possibilities for funding levels, but this is the language. And eligible uses of those appropriation bonds include repairing the physical damage, including infrastructure. So repair, renovation, this is largely language straight from the bill, new construction, including site prep, design, engineering, and landscaping, infrastructure, streetscaping, other damage that might have been done to the public property. And then that piece about anti-displacement and community ownership. In our case, it would be acquisition of property in St. Paul by the Housing and Redevelopment Authority so that we can ensure ultimate community ownership, land banking and land trusts for future redevelopment, and then financing of any of these activities that's taken on by a private party with an agreement with the city. So that would be through a loan fund with the HRA and probably overseen by a commission. And then finally, we've kind of charted out what would that look like in those two kind of categories of the actual damage repair that still hasn't been done, and then into the next category, sort of the public infrastructure, property acquisition, land banking, again partnering with a community land bank so that we can assist in moving businesses who'd like to do so from a rental situation to an ownership situation, and in a land bank strategy that would allow the tenants to build equity until they're able to purchase those buildings. And then finally, the revolving loan fund is with a really low interest rates, affordable housing investment. So that would be really critical in the area as property taxes and property values are going up. And then we have an idea for an HRA owned property that could potentially be like a small business incubator. So I am at the end of my presentation. I think we'll have Beatrice will take over this point.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all very much. I'd ask Nicole, Chad, and Gloria to all unmute and turn your videos back on. I want to thank all of you for your amazing presentations. And Gloria, we have a couple things that we just want to share with you, and these are from the Q&A directly. Somebody writes, "Bless you, Gloria," and then "Thank you for your strength and support of your community one day at a time, and our viewer admires you." So thank you very much for that. We know how hard it must be for you, so thank you. So we're going to take lots of questions. There's a lot of material here, so feel free to put questions in the Q&A here in Zoom, and also if you're watching this on Facebook, go ahead and type the questions there in the comments section. So I'd like to go a couple of different places with this. One, I want to talk just briefly about insurance. This seems to be kind of a big one here. I know that it's complicated because sometimes it's the building owner that has insurance and not the shop owner. Are there some things that we can do in terms of insurance? Is there maybe a bill that needs to go into play that would help in an instance like this? Any of you want to talk about, I'm just throwing things out at this point. Any of you want to jump more on the insurance issue?
I can start talking about insurance because when we did the We Love Midway, We Love St. Paul Fund, we've realized that so many of the places, first of all, at the early stages of the application process, when we got the applications in, a lot of times we still had questions because they didn't know yet maybe what was covered by insurance. For some of them, maybe they hadn't met with insurance yet, or they had, but they hadn't heard back from them yet. And then a lot of times they found out they may have been underinsured. I talked to a business owner who's on Selby shortly after this, and he had said, that got me thinking, I wonder what my insurance policy looks like. And he met with his insurance company and said, you know what, I'd have been in the same boat. So I changed my insurance policy. So I guess what I'm getting at is I think it's important that people educate themselves on what their insurance policy really is. And you probably want to review it every year to see if it's what you want and what your rate is and see if that's what you want. But one thing that was helpful through this process, some of those construction companies that I mentioned, they took it on themselves to go and talk with these building owners and businesses that were impacted and said, hey, we're happy to look over your insurance paperwork. And if we can help you at all, we would like to do that. Another great resource that we found was the Department of Commerce. And I don't know if Leah Wilkes is on tonight, but Leah's been a great resource. I would encourage people, if they have questions about how insurance works or if they're concerned about their coverage, you can also look at the state's Department of Commerce and they can help out too.
All right, fantastic. Nicole or Gloria, would you like to add to that?
Right now, as of right now, for me, I'm really upset with my insurance company, and I don't even want to talk to them or ask my agents anything about it. I'm just like right now, I'm just really upset, that, they turned me down, even with Midway Chamber and Murchison, helped me. They just turned me down. And so right now, as of right now, I think I got the insurance because it's required, for the building. But when we needed the help, they're not there to help us. If we don't have, Chad, Murchison, Midway Chamber and all of this nonprofit to help us, we'll be in trouble. Our building will not be able to reopen because, about 50 guys, loot went through my building. And so, I mean, I just, so I'm called for when the insurance deny me.
Right. Are there businesses along University that are not able to open because of lack of insurance?
I don't know for sure if anybody has not been able to reopen because of it. I think most of them had some form of insurance. A lot of times it was just a matter of if they had enough coverage.
Okay, great. All right, we've got some questions. Why did the city of St. Paul rely on the state funds for grants and loans? Minneapolis has forgivable loans that were separate from the state funds.
I'll try to take that question. I'm not 100% sure I understand it, but I think that they're referring to the Commercial Property Redevelopment Fund in Minneapolis, which was something that was already in existence. The HRA and the city, have some of this was prior to the civil unrest with the bridge fund and COVID funding already going out, like had gathered up all of the resources that they could and did a lot of millions of dollars of grants to small businesses, and then we've utilized other resources. But I think what they're talking about is a fund that Minneapolis had in place that wasn't limited to this use. It just was a program that they did have in place that they were able to pivot to this use.
Right, okay,
That's my best guess.
okay, all right. That sounds excellent. A question about the community and keeping the feeling of the community. And so thinking about changing the face of the community. And when I use the word face, I mean in every sense of the word. A couple of things. One, Nicole, you'd mentioned the HRA and using community dollars for community ownership.
Mhm.
Is there going to be an effort along University Avenue to address the needs of the community so that it's not all of the way along University, five-story, not that there's anything wrong with these, but five-story buildings that look the same all of the way along University? Is there anything that's being done?
So I think you're speaking to exactly what we're discussing. That funding that we're hoping for from the state and we own some property. We have private sector who we're talking to and working with, and various funding sources. And that is absolutely part of the plan, is to ensure that frankly it's about site control, right? So it depends on who owns the land, who's able to get site control, how much they're able to determine that community continues to own, or that the character continues to remain the same.
Great, that's excellent. Chad, Gloria, I'd like your input on the community itself and trying to keep it keep the community.
Yeah, well, and this is something that's always been really important to me because University Avenue has its own charm, it has its own feel. We don't want it to look like other streets which have their own charm. Then that's great, but it's not ours. And I tell people I think we have the most diverse cuisine over any other street in Minnesota. And until somebody tells me I'm not accurate, I'm going to keep saying it. But even if we're not, it's so unique. And at a moment like this, when we see so much property damage and then money coming into the neighborhood, there's definitely a risk that the people who have been supporters and members of this community all of a sudden can't afford it, or somebody else has other plans for the site and it doesn't include them. So I think, for one, when you think about those projects that are going to be happening, if you have an opinion about it, make sure your voice is heard. It's up to the district councils in some part to make sure that the community knows what's going on. But these get voted on. They get voted on at city council, at planning commission, and other places. So if you have concerns about it, make sure your voice is heard. There can be things that are done in zoning codes and other places that can factor these things in too.
Okay, great. And Gloria, when you come back, I want to ask you about community members as well. So we are getting more questions. Let's see, Gloria and others. How could a small group of volunteers get connected to a project to help build or offer other help for a week or two? That's a great question.
Well, I think I'm Asian, so I've been targeted. Like this morning, I have graffiti spray on my building again, and I feel like I feel like the community is against me just because I'm, woman, own business, and I'm Asian too, that I've been targeted. Building around me, they don't have anything against them. Even the city came, and helped me to clean all the graffitis, but the community, they saw against me. That they came back and, damaged windows and damaged graffiti and put graffiti on my doors. On the buildings, on east and west side of the building. So, and, I wanted to look good. I want the community, to help me to build, us to build better, living in a community, because, the people in our community are the one that hurting us, especially myself. And the reason I say this is because, I got hit crime, on March 20th, somebody shoot into my door. I don't know when the shooting, started, but we saw on Saturday morning on March 20th, and then they were shooting in the windows, and they're shooting, into, the wall and everything. And I think because I'm Asian that, people are against me. I hate to think of this, but it's because the problem is continuous. So I want the community to help me, build our small business. So, we have a better living, in that community, and not scared about driving there or park there or go to the building itself. People, my tenants asked me if we could, pay a police, to come to the building so that they'd be safer. All of us can be safer. How can I afford it? Because I got tenant, don't pay rent. I went through the pandemic, closing business for months, 3-4 months. And they hear this looting, vandalized, hate crimes, and, racist.
Mhm. Would it be helpful if community members came to the area, walked the sidewalks, parked, made their presence known? Would that be helpful?
Right now, when we call the police,
Mhm.
1 hour, they'll call us back and ask, oh, do you still, need our help?
Mhm.
They will start ask that, like hour and a half.
Right.
So
And-
how could so I want the community to know that now police, after the riots, after George Floyd, the
Right.
police don't even care about us anymore.
Right.
So don't even bother calling the police. I just
Right.
went in, to get my license to carry, but I don't even know how to use a gun.
Right.
just-
And yeah, so I'll defer to maybe Nicole in terms of police, if you wanted to say anything about that, City of St. Paul. It may be out of your bailiwick.
Out of my bailiwick, but I certainly will convey that concern. I'm certain it's been shared, but that what I can offer is to convey that concern again. If you're not getting response time, response quickly from the police department, that's certainly something that needs to be addressed. So I will convey that message.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
I would mention on that part, the city of St. Paul is currently conducting, it's a public safety commission. It's a 48-member group. And a big part of what they're doing is trying to figure out if there's a more efficient way of handling emergency and non-emergency phone calls. There's 4 priority levels, and priority 4 and 5 are deemed non-emergency. So that would be, my neighbor's dog is barking, my neighbors are noisy, somebody stole my car last night, they're not here anymore, so there's no direct danger right now. These are the calls that they're wondering how we can perhaps find another way to conduct them in a way where, first of all, the community would feel safer calling the police, but also perhaps in a way where the response time would change as well. And if I can jump on that volunteer question, there's a group called Hands on Twin Cities. It's a nonprofit, and Hands on Twin Cities is a nonprofit that actually specializes in connecting volunteers with volunteer opportunities. They've been working with the Rebuild Twin Cities group. I believe they've done a little bit with the CCC group. So they are familiar with what's going on and the need for volunteers in the community. But the other part of that question is just what can you do to help the community? It's give business to these businesses. Gloria, do you have, is it 18 businesses in your building?
No, I have maybe closer to a little over maybe 25 now.
Yeah. So I'd
Yeah.
encourage people to go to Century Plaza. Are you 995 University?
Yes.
995 University. Check out these businesses. That's your homework, everybody. Go,
Yes.
and especially if you've never been to that building before. There's places you can go to eat. There's other places you can just check out and just walk around and see what's there.
There you go.
Thank
Yep,
you.
that's excellent. Yeah, and the local newspaper is the Monitor, is that right? So writing letters to the editor to say we're in support of all of the businesses, perhaps that might be a way as well. All right, thank you all. That's excellent. Let's see, Chad, can you speak about the business owners adjacent to the soccer stadium who were displaced by the developer who sees the need to build up the area? And are they getting any help?
Yeah, so there was the primary one I think that question is addressing is part of that Midway shopping center that it's still standing, but it was condemned right away. There's fencing around it. And so it's not one that burned down. It's still there, but it was deemed not safe to be in. And that's it is a spot that the developers there are hoping to develop into something else. Peking Garden was one of those places. They have relocated. And by the way, I always felt bad for Peking Garden. They were over at the U before there was a football stadium, got displaced when that stadium happened. They move over here. And then of all places, now another stadium is right next door to them. But they actually moved into the old My Village space at University and Western and just reopened up for takeout starting March 18th. And they're going to be doing indoor dining fairly quickly. So I know our fund was able to help them out. I believe at least one more of the other funds was able to help them out. So as these places are figuring out where to go, and we've been trying to offer assistance, others have as well. I think ADA, Asian Economic Development Association, has offered probably the most help out of any organization for the businesses that were over there. But trying to connect them with whatever kind of need they have, if it's, an attorney, real estate person, and then once they have a new space, our fund and others are set up. So we've been able to give them some contributions so they can at least get some of the equipment and other necessary things.
If I can jump onto that answer as well. Chad speaks to about two things that I was just speaking of. If a business owner is not a tenant and they're able to own their building, then they're at less risk of that happening. So that's something that we want to assist with is helping. If a business owner wanted to own their business, helping with programs for that. That's the primary thing. I just think that it's something to note, to make note of. That's really an important piece. The other piece is as new development comes in and it's more expensive, right? If we at the city are supporting financially a development, if the city were to provide any financial support for a new development, one thing that we could prioritize would be affordable commercial spaces as well, not just affordable housing, but we could tie that kind of we could tie that priority to any kind of possible assistance for a commercial development.
Great. Chad, back to you. Quick question. Is there a list somewhere of the businesses that were relocated outside? And where can we go to find them? So you've given us Peking Village. Are there others?
Well, Bolay, the one that you saw had burned down, that one relocated over to 1341 Pascal, which is just a couple blocks from the main entrance of the State Fair. He's doing great. Lloyd's Pharmacy had burned down. They are located in a smaller space 2 doors down from that and are going to be relocating back into that old space. They're, if you drive by it, they're in the process of rebuilding. That's going to be open sometime later this year. Sports Dome, last I heard, they don't know what they're doing. Big Top, I'm not sure about them either at this point. I also don't know about the Napa. So those are the ones that I at least know of for sure off the top of my head.
Okay.
Anyway, those are the bigger buildings that had burned down or were deemed unusable.
Unusable. Great. Thank you very much, Chad. Nicole, could you address the controversy, and you touched on this briefly. Could you address the controversy of the Lexington Avenue vacant property and the proposed apartments, and how in the world to determine affordable in a somewhat impoverished area?
That's a really good question, and this is so hard right now. then there, you know, there are kind of two sides to that problem, right? And we have a housing shortage. Let's start with that. Like, there's a housing shortage. We don't have enough housing. That makes things more expensive. So there's that piece of the equation. This discussion, though, and the discourse around this matter highlights the other side, the real challenges that we have. That, you know, so housing prices and rental rates are rising at every level, and the risks of displacement as property values go up are real. It's a real risk, right? So we have in the city, we do have some programs in place already. You know, the 40 NOAA preservation program, we have an affordable housing trust, and we have some programs, but there are many tools that we should consider, and they may or may not be helpful. That's why we need to study them. Inclusionary zoning being one that's being discussed. So we should look at that, and we are going to look at that. We are prioritizing that study right now that will look at several different tools to produce and preserve affordable housing and to mitigate the risks of displacement. So all of that whole discussion is real. It's necessary, and we're prioritizing kind of looking at those tools.
Great. All right. Are there any businesses that are wanting to come into the Midway? Any that weren't there before?
Yes. Well, first of all, we actually just had a meeting this morning about over a lunch hour about some commercial space that's going up, commercial and community space. Now, some of it's people that are sort of in the neighborhood, St. Paul City School, Keystone Community Services. But we know that some of them are going to be attracting some businesses that are coming from elsewhere. I heard just yesterday, Wycliffe Building, which is an industrial area kind of around the University, Hampton, University Raymond area, that they have a lot of manufacturing in that building, and they've been getting some new tenants that have been coming in from elsewhere. I actually was just talking to one of our members last week who's a industrial commercial real estate agent, and he was saying that he's been showing properties to a few different clients and they want to be in the Midway. He can't tell me who they are, of course, but yeah, there's definitely still some interest in it.
That's nice. That's excellent. And this is a really good question. Is there any legal aid going to businesses to fight denial of insurance?
I don't know for sure if there is or isn't. You know, it's not something that our fund has been used for. It's also not a question anybody's asked us if they could get any funding for that. So I don't know what kind of a need there is. Again, I think if somebody has that, you know, concern with their insurance, they should be contacting the Department of Commerce, seeking some advice, and then potentially getting an attorney.
And where is the best place I can donate money to assist?
Chad's got a fund.
I do have a fund. You can email me if you want information about that. Again, I would also say, you know, going out and supporting those businesses, you know, getting takeout from Peking Garden, going to the places at Century Plaza, or going to Bolé. That's the best way to just directly help out those who have had a tough year.
Right. No, that's excellent. Let's see, Chad, thanks for your work. How can the community watching now support at University Avenue businesses? Go to the businesses, right? All right. How are you working with the district and community councils?
Who is that directed at?
Anybody?
It doesn't say. It could be anybody. Gloria, are you working with the district and community councils at all?
No, because, you know, all the, like I say, we have applied a lot of funds and we got denied, you know, everywhere that we apply. And the only people that, you know, came over is Chad, my friend Chad from Midway Chambers, and we love funding. They're the only people that comes to us and sympathetic with us and help us through, you know, this traumatized, this, you know, how it aches. And you know, now I scared to apply anyway, because every place I apply the deed for my building, you know, and they say I'm not eligible. I applied something for the city of St. Paul. I got denied. I got so many denied. Nobody has helped me except, you know, Chad and, you know, his team. So I really appreciate Chad. I really appreciate, you know, Midway St. Paul Founding. I mean, I could never say the name, but I really appreciate Midway Chambers. Chad has been like a angel to us and to all the people, the tenants in the building.
That's fantastic. That's excellent. And Nicole, Chad, are you all working with the district and community councils?
Yeah, well, I'll say actually, I emailed 3 of them this morning about something. So yeah, we work with them somewhat closely, have a good relationship. And also, this kind of goes back to that conversation where there's a question about the lattice development at University of Lexington. I just think that a big question that so many communities throughout the country ask is, what happens when you've got developers on one side and you've got community on the other side, and they clash so often they don't agree on what's right for their neighborhood. And wouldn't it be nice if there's a way to find some common ground where we can still have projects happening, people can move into different housing projects, but it's something that the community also is in favor of. And so one thing we've been doing recently, we have this Reimagine Midway task force at the chamber, and we've actually been reviewing different neighborhood plans. We had some conversations with some of the district councils about this, but we are reviewing some of our plans, finding what they have in common, and then saying if there's things that they have in common that they want to see happen, are there things that we can also push? Can the business community and can the chamber push those forward too? If the business community and these neighborhood district councils and the neighborhood and the residents can come together and push for things, it has a much better chance of happening, I think.
Right. That's excellent. Nicole, did you want to?
Yeah, well, I'll say, my department works with the district councils on many things. I've been here a few months, so I've gotten to personally meet many as groups, small groups, large groups. I'm so impressed that we have the district council set up here. This is not something that every city has. I come from Oklahoma City where we have neighborhood associations, but there's not like funding provided by, to support like an actual nonprofit in each kind of district council. So I'm very impressed by that setup. I'm very impressed by the level of engagement of the district councils. I think everyone who's here and who's lived here kind of just thinks that's normal. That's the way it is everywhere. And it's not. It's really impressive and important and valuable and effective. And so I'll just say that I'm building my relationships with them as quickly as I can. But
Right.
I'm impressed by the structure.
That's excellent. A question about the business owners and, becoming whole happens in a number of different ways. So it's not just the financial and support that way, but there's also the mental health issue. So thinking about that, are there any efforts that are underway that any of you know of that would support the business owners to make sure that this is an incredibly difficult year? So we've had the pandemic, we've had the riots and civil unrest, the damage to the buildings. Is there anything that's being done to help the business owners that way?
If there isn't, there should be. And I don't know if there is either, but
I wrote that down.
Yeah, I was going to say, that gives me an idea that, maybe the Midway Chamber can think about I don't know who the right person is who could speak on that, but if there was a way we could find out who, it'd be great for us to do an event. And if the league wants to do it, we'd love to partner with you on it.
Okay, all right. That sounds excellent. All right, so we've got 2 more questions, and the last one is the marching orders for everybody. So before the marching orders, have any of you thought or have an opinion on trying to brand the Midway University area as an international corridor? Think Eat Street on Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis, Eat International, Food Epicenter of St. Paul, Gourmet Center of the Twin Center, etc. Any ideas?
I love it. I'm all for it. This ties in really well with how I call the Midway the brewery district of St. Paul. So I think we can have both of those marketing ideas coexist. I think it's wonderful.
All right, fantastic.
Agreed.
All right, so put that in the hopper. All right, so marching orders. We've got a bunch of people on the call. What can we do? Go to businesses. What else?
If you want to volunteer, I would say Hands-On Twin Cities would be the organization to reach out to. You can
Okay.
always contact me for any follow-up, chat@midwaychamber.com. Yeah, go to the businesses, support them.
Yep. I think, I don't know if everyone knows about the like Dine St. Paul campaign that we partnered with Visit St. Paul on, and it's kind of going on right now. You can go on this Convention and Visitors Bureau on the Visit St. Paul website and register if you want to do that. But you can go check in at a restaurant and use the hashtag Dine St. Paul just to promote your local restaurants. It's really all still related to what Chad's saying. Just go support the businesses. You know, if you're not comfortable eating in yet, get carry out.
Right.
Anything that you can do to support businesses, I think that is the key right now.
Fantastic. And Gloria, marching orders for us.
I don't have anything. You know, like Chad said, you know, they can certainly reach out to Chad because he's a very good, you know, advocate for us, you know, and I mean, I'm talking about myself. I went through so much. Okay, I went through traumatized, you know, loss of sleep, you know, many nights of like crying, you know, I have to look for money to repair this and that. And thank goodness, you know, Chad is an angel who came and helped. He's on jams. He came and help release, you know, a burden on my back. But, you know, I just want them to reach out to the nonprofit, especially like Midway Chambers and We Love St. Paul. I think those people are the ones that, you know, really, you know, see the community, you know, and needed help because they came out and saw that we needed the help. Okay, like. I mean, for example, like Governor Tim Walz came over and he saw all the damages at my building, you know, but nothing happened. You know, we didn't get any funding, nor the tenants, you know, got nothing. So most our funding is through Midway Chambers. And
All right.
I appreciate all the people that, you know, donated to them, you know, because they're the one that reached out to us. They all,
Right.
you know, they're the one that, you know how we feel and the suffering that we're in.
Right. All right, that sounds perfect. Well, I think we have a good set of marching orders, things that we can do, so that's lovely. And we've got just a couple of announcements here at the end. I want to thank all of you very much for being here as our presenters this evening. And I don't know why this screen does this, so give me just a second. I lost my notes. It's been a pleasure having all of you here this evening at our April Learn with the League. We thank our presenters, Chad Koulis, Gloria Wong, and Nicole Goodman. We offer these events on the last Tuesday of the month at 7. Our next program will be in June. We don't have a date yet, but it is going to be on who gets to vote, a discussion of legislation here and around the country. If you like this program and want to watch it again or see any of our past programs, they are on our League of Women Voters St. Paul YouTube page. You will receive a survey asking about future topics and letting us know what you thought about this presentation after you're done. Later, you will get that survey. So we do ask you to complete that and share your thoughts with us. We'd like to thank our presenters, the program committee for putting this program together, and especially St. Paul Neighborhood Network for your support. And finally, thank you to all of our viewers this evening. Thanks for watching.